Presidents Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump will hold a phone call this afternoon to talk about setting the Ukraine conflict and normalizing relations between Russia and the United States. For more on this, let's now cross to SABC News correspondent Dasha Chernyshova, who is live for us in Moscow. Dasha, very good afternoon to you. So this call has been described as a high-stakes call. So just give us a sense about what will be top of the agenda during this call.
Well, top of the agenda will be Ukraine, and the Kremlin has confirmed that they have said that there was the preparation for this conversation and some theses have been prepared for the Russian president. But also in this conversation, the sides will be talking about bilateral relationship, the normalization of which has only begun last month. We are hearing the Kremlin say that at this stage, Moscow and Washington have managed to bring the understanding of their positions closer, but the differences remain. And these are these very differences that President Trump and President Putin will be talking about. On Ukraine, we also hearing other Russian officials say that they are not losing hope of a ceasefire, but Moscow insists that ceasefire should be part of a wider deal for Ukraine settlement, not just as a step towards peace, but part of peace itself. And the Kremlin's aide Yuri Ushakov has also pointed out that after the ceasefire was proposed, Ukraine has launched a series of large-scale attacks against Russia and its civilian infrastructure. So in Moscow, there is a very high hope that its signals sent last Thursday through the U.S. envoy Stephen Witkoff, who traveled to Moscow for a meeting with the Russian president, have been heard and they will be taken into account.
I want us, just to continue looking at the sentiment around normalizing relations between Russia and the United States. I mean, we understand, of course, that Putin has been addressing a meeting of the Russian Union of Industrialists as well as entrepreneurs in Moscow. Perhaps just give us a sense of just some of the challenges the country is facing as it relates to business constraints, just given the sanctions that, of course, came off and were intensified because of the Ukraine and Russia war.
Well, the Russian president has been addressing indeed the Russian entrepreneurs, and he has said that the growth of the Russian economy by more than 4% last year is what they have made possible. It is their achievement. He also noted that all that has been indeed taking place as the Russian economy has been under unprecedented sanctions. He was also saying that sanctions are not something temporary. He noted that if sanctions are relieved, if they are eased, they have been used as an element of the constraints of an attempt to contain the Russian economy and Russia in general, and saying that if there are no sanctions, then there will be some other mechanism used against Russia. So the perception in Moscow is that although it will be welcoming the return of foreign companies that have left or more cooperation with the American companies, as the head of Russia's direct investment fund, Kirill Dmitriev, has indicated, Moscow will be willing to make sure that its own national interests are well protected. Having said that, we're also hearing that after the normalization of relations between Moscow and Washington, after this political element is resolved and all political issues have been settled, there is indeed a lot of space for the cooperation between Russian and American companies, including in the areas such as exploration of Russia's rare earth metals. Russia has many reserves of those, more than Ukraine, Russian officials note, and also in space, with Kirill Dmitriev, who was part of Russia's delegations to Saudi Arabia, saying that he will have a meeting with Elon Musk.
We understand, of course, Dasha, as we wrap up our conversation, that ahead of this particular call that Zelensky, said that it is Putin, in fact, who is dragging out this war. For a week now, Putin has been unable to squeeze out a yes to the ceasefire proposal. Perhaps just give us a sense from his vantage point in terms of the peace talks, the EU's role in these discussions and this matter. What is that looking like in terms of will we see a Trump also perhaps getting a follow-up call with Zelensky in the near future?
Well, it's unclear whether the American president will be making other calls that day, but what's clear from the Russian perspective is that Moscow didn't want the ceasefire to allow Ukraine to rearm and regroup. Having said that, Russia was insisting that it holds the upper hand on the battlefield, and therefore the ceasefire was not advantageous for the Russian side. What Moscow was saying is that Ukraine was not interested in peace because ever since they were securing more weapons from Ukraine, from the European countries, and securing the restart of the armaments flow from Ukraine, or from the United States, Ukraine launched more attacks against Russia, and that was the position of Moscow. But also we understand that Moscow will be willing to negotiate with the United States, saying that they're not quite interested in the territorial issue, but they are interested in making sure that there is no other anti-Russia, as they have described it, created in Ukraine, although the officials here have said that there will be no territorial concessions to Ukraine.
Dasha, thank you so much for that update.